Hello everyone, welcome to Software Testing Help. I am Sharmila and this video is the continuation of a previous session wherein we saw an overview of the UI Automator tool. In this session, we'll see how to locate elements in native application and its different identification techniques. So let me open the UI Automator viewer tool. For that, go to Android SDK bundle, select tools and run the batch file. So this in turn is going to open the tool for you. Okay, so now I have my tool open. Let me open the application, the mobile device and have it ready for automation. So I'll just show you in real time what test case I'll be automating. My test case is going to be a failure login scenario. I'll click on this menu icon, and then I'll click on the sign in button and then enter invalid username password here. Click on sign in again, which in turn will give me a login failure message like this. So before we try to proceed with automation, first we should understand how to locate the elements that we'll be interacting with. So first comes this element, that is the menu icon that I'll be invoking. Only after then I'll be clicking on the sign in button. So let's see how to identify this particular element. For that we'll take the screenshot using the tool. So I just click on this icon, which in turn will directly take the screenshot from the device. Okay, so next I'm going to inspect this particular element. So when I click on it, you can see its properties getting loaded in the right pane. You have attributes like index, text, ID, class name, package name, content description. So basically we will be using only these attributes for identifying the web elements in your native app. Now in this case, for this web element, I'm going to select a class name and the content description, and using these two attributes, I'm going to identify this particular element, because I can't go with class name alone because I don't find it as a unique value. I can see that some other elements are also having the same class name, so I'm combining two attributes in order to identify this particular element. So I'll be creating an XPath with this and I'll identify this element. So let me show you how to create an XPath. So you have several techniques to create your XPath. I'll just explain it to you. Whenever you're combining the class name with any other attribute, then you always start with the class name, and then in the square braces you specify the value of the attribute and the name of the attribute. So that is one technique. And in case if you're not mentioning the class name, you're just going by the attribute value, then you can mention star at the beginning, which means that you are looking for any node which has the attribute name and that particular attribute value. And if you're going only for the class name, in cases wherein your class name is unique, then you can just specify the class name alone in the XPath. Okay, so this identification is a bit different from our web application identification of elements. So just observe how I'm going to create an XPath for this particular element. So in this case, I told that I'm considering the class name and the content description, which means that I'm combining the class name with one more attribute. So I'll go for the first technique. So I'll start with double slash and then the class name. This is the class name. I just give the class name directly, and in the square braces I will specify the attribute name and the attribute value. So my attribute name is content description, so I say at content description is the attribute name whose value is, I am using an equal to relation. You can use contains relation also, as we use for our web elements in Selenium. Like the same thing, you can write it like this using contains relationship. Okay. So what I have basically done here is I started with the class name, and then in the square braces I took a particular attribute and mentioned its value. That's it. So now my XPath is ready for this particular element. So let me use it in my code now. So this is the class that I have created, and I already have all the initial configuration set. So I think this part you already know. Using desired capabilities, I stored the properties like browser name, device name, application name, and these will be read at runtime by the Appium when I initiate the driver. Okay, so now let me, my application is identified. So let me interact with the web elements and perform automation on it. Now this is quite similar to our web page automation in Selenium. You say driver.find element by, I'm going to go by XPath. Only the identification technique of XPath is different, but the others are going to be the same. So I get the XPath that I identified and I pass it over here. And then the action that we perform, that is going to be a click action, right? I should be clicking on this particular menu icon. So I just call the action called click. That's it. Next, once I click on this, I should invoke this sign in link. So let me take the screenshot again. You know that Automator Viewer is not a dynamic tool. So for every change you make on the screen, you should take a screenshot again and again. Okay, so now my screenshot is ready. I am inspecting on this element, and here you see I have attributes ID, class name, package, and content description. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to create an XPath using two attributes and one class name. So I'm going to select resource ID and content description along with the class name. Now again, I'm going to follow the first technique, but here I'll be having two attributes in the square braces, which means that I'll be having or combining two attributes using a relationship called AND. So first I'll start by double slash and then pass the class name. This is going to be my class name. And then inside the square braces, I'm going to add two attributes. One is the resource ID and then the content description. So first, let me add the resource ID. So I say, I'm going to use a contains relationship for that. So I say contains resource ID, and the ID I'm going to mention is maybe a part of that particular text. So I just take the last trailing part, arrow icon, and I'm going to add an AND relationship and add another attribute saying content description. So I say content description equal to easy reorder. So here I'm using an equal relationship. That's it. Now my XPath is ready for this particular element. So what I did here, I started with the class name, and in the square braces, I mentioned two attributes. So in the last example, we saw a class name with one attribute. Here I am just combining another attribute inside it for even more uniqueness in identifying that element. Okay, so now let me pass this in my code. And again, here I'm going to perform a click action. So I just call the method called click. That's it. Okay, so once I click on this, next I should enter values in email and password. So let me take screenshot of this screen now. So I just click on the icon. Okay, so I'll be inspecting the element email and password. You see that email is having resource ID, class name, package name, and the password is also having resource ID, class name, and package name. But here, one thing to note is that both are having the same class name. So I'm just omitting the class name part. I find that the email, that is the resource ID, is unique for both. Email is having a resource ID saying com walmart android ID email. This is having a resource ID saying com walmart android ID password. So my identification technique here is I'm going to directly use ID rather than XPath. So I will just specify it like this. I will say driver dot find element by ID, and here is the value of the resource ID that I'll be passing it over. So here I'll get the resource ID. Just click on that, get the resource ID, pass it over. That's it. And then I say send keys action. I'm going to just pass an invalid username, so abc@ymail.com. Similarly for password. So now we are done with identifying these two elements. Next is the sign in button. So let me click on it. I have text attribute, resource ID, class name, and package. So in this case, I'm going to go with class name and text, and then I'll be creating an XPath. So you can do it like that. Or another option is you can just go by the resource ID directly, as we did for the email ID and password. So resource ID, going by the resource ID directly will be driver.find element by ID followed by this entire value. If you're going by XPath, I'll show you how to create an XPath now. So in this case, I'll be using the second technique. So I'm not mentioning any class name. I'll just go by the text itself. So I just give double slash and star. And inside the square braces, I'll give the attribute that is text equal to sign in. That's it. So this will be read as any node that contains the attribute text with value sign in will be referred for. So that is how it reads it. When you say star, it means that any node. When you specify a class name, then it means that a node with so and so class name. Okay, so that's the difference with using star and a class name. Now let me pass this in my code. So I will say driver dot find element, and I used XPath. So by XPath. This is the XPath expression, and I will say click. Click is the action for sign in button. Okay, so after entering the invalid value, I will get an error message like this. So let me take the screenshot of that. And now let me identify this element. So I have login failed. I have a text called login failed, resource ID, class name, package. So I think I can go by the ID because that is unique. I have only one alert box in this particular screen. So I think this will be unique. So I will go by the resource ID itself. So here I will say driver dot find element by ID, and here I'll pass the entire resource ID, and I'll get the text of that resource ID, which means whatever text that is getting displayed on for that particular element. I'll in turn store it in a string called error message, and this string I will assert whether it has the expected message saying login failed. So I'll just say assert equals assert whether the expected and the actual are same. So here I'll pass it login failed. Okay, so what I did here basically is that from the element I got the text, I just stored it in another string variable and verifying whether my expected and the actual are the same. The error message that I expect and that is getting displayed are the same. Okay, so that's much about this. Now I'll add some wait commands in between because this application is taking some delay when I load each and every page. So I will add some wait commands in between each element identification. Okay, so now that I've added the wait commands, I'm going to run this code. So before running your actual code, you should start your Appium server. Appium is open. Now start the server. The reason for doing so is that whenever this line is getting invoked, that is, my driver is getting initiated, it will look for my Appium with this server address. Only if my Appium is found, the other connections will be made and automation will proceed. Okay, so my Appium server is up now. You can see the message, welcome to Appium version so and so. So once you get this message, just go to your code and now give a run here. So I'm going to run as testng. You can see the automation in the mobile screen and the log getting populated in the Appium tool as well. So you can see the log message in the Appium, and here is my mobile device wherein the automation happens. The Walmart application is getting opened. So as and when each command is invoked, you can see that it says pushing command to Appium work queue, got data from client. So client means the code that we mentioned. That is what it says as a client. Appium is the server. It's reading from the client, and then it's performing it on the mobile device. Yeah. Now it's entering email and password. It's entering the password, clicking on sign in, and here it's verifying the login failure message. You can see the logs getting populated in the Appium tool. And my test case has passed. So this is how you will automate using Appium on your mobile device. All the methods or the functions that you use in Selenium web application automation is similar, but the only difference is the initial configuration that you do, the device name, the Android version, the application package name, activity name that you set. Only then Appium communicates with this particular device during runtime, and then you initiate your remote driver. And this XPath identification technique is going to differ a bit. Other functions are similar. So I think that's quite easy to automate on an Android mobile device once you have all your Appium, the initial configuration set, and you understand this XPath identification. I hope you got a good understanding in this session. Thank you.